Bienvenidos, Ushamdid, and welcome Anne Arundel Community College learners from the Spring 2023 semester, taking the CTS-233 Section 400 Network Programmability course. This is the Cisco Networking Academy's DEVASC 200-901 Certification Exam Preparation course, and in this video tutorial, our focus is now going to turn to version control. In Lab 3.3.11, we're focusing exclusively on get. Now, right out of the gate, this is what you're going to be learning in part 2 of this lab. We're going to see how we would initialize get. We're going to learn a status command. We're going to set some parameters so that when you're making your commits, that your information is going to be attributed to the commits that are being made. And I'm going to show you some different options that you might want to be adding in there. And then we're going to go over some status commands like get status. We're going to take a look at get log and a few others. And then we're going to jump into part 3 in the next video. So let's go ahead and dive in and jump onto our virtual machine. Now, you do not have to be on the DevASC virtual machine in order to do what we're going to be doing in this video. You could be doing this on your Mac if you've installed Get, or maybe an Ubuntu virtual machine where you've installed Get. So, very important that Get, G-I-T, what we're going to be using here, is not GitLab. It is not GitHub. Now, they can be used together, and they often are. However, Get that we're displaying here and that we're going to be working on in this lab, this is not GitHub, this is not GitLab. Those are mutually exclusive, totally different products, right? So remember that. Get is an open software that is available on multiple operating systems, and it allows us to do version control. So let's go ahead and dive in here in our home directory. You can see we've got some files that we created. Your output may vary just a little bit here. And so one of the first things that we want to do is we're going to set some parameters. Now, they show you that you can say get config, and we'll say, oops, sorry, I went global there. I said config, and then I typed config. So we're going to say get config global. Now, the two options I'm going to show you here, the two settings that I'm going to show you here, these are required settings, and these are the only two that are required. And then I'm going to show you some optional ones that the lab doesn't show you that you might want to include. So we're going to go ahead and say user.name, and I'm just going to go ahead and put in here Travis P. Bonfili, F-I-G-L-I, right, for my username. And then we'll recall that command, and we can say user.email, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll put in here tpbonfi at aacc.edu. Now, those are the two required settings. Now, there's other things we could put in here, right? And again, I'm just hitting the up arrow to recall the command so I don't have to type all of that again. I could put initials, and I think I spelled that right. And so let's go ahead and put TPB. And then I could set a time zone if I wanted to, right? And so let's go ahead and say time zone, and we'll set the time zone to America, and I could set it to New York. Whoops, New York. All right, so those are some of the additional settings that you could use. Again, user.name and user.email, those are required, right? Those are required. So now that we've got those settings set up, you might be wondering, okay, well, great, what exactly are we doing here? Well, you'll notice that for all of the commits that we make, right, all the changes that we're making with GitHub, or well, sorry, with Get, I made a mistake there, with Get, that these are the settings when I make commits, right, and I'm making changes, those settings are going to be attributed to the changes that I'm making. And so that's why you would want to set something like this, and we'll see how you can go back and take a look and actually see this information along with the changes that are being made. Now, get config -- list is going to show me the settings that I currently have. Now, if I wanted to change the settings, like for example, maybe the initials, right? If I wanted to do tpbonfi, oops, sorry, tpbonfi, for example, and then we say get config -- list, you can see it just simply overwrites whatever was there. So let me set this back to TPB because those are actually my initials. And then you can see git config -- list, again, is going to list out everything that you see there. All right. So that's how we could check. Now, another quick command that you'll want to know is git log. Now, again, you're going to notice we get a fatal error here. Now, again, I'm showing you this command now so that it's fresh in your mind when we get into the next video where we will be getting some output here. And git log is going to show me a lot of the changes. It's going to show you all the changes that have been made. And it's also going to show you a commit ID number that we can then gather some additional information from. But you'll see it says fatal, not a Git repository or any of the parent directories, right? It's looking for .get. And that's what we're about to see when we do this git init command. So before we do the git init command, real quickly, you might also be asking, well, wait a minute, what is this? Why are we using git? Well, it's software version control. And what it's going to allow me to do is maybe take a Python script I'm working on and I can create sort of, think of it as like a copy, right? Or a different branch in Git parlance. I can create a branch with that script, and then I can go in there and make all these changes to it and see if this is going to work, is it not going to work? And then I can always fall back to the original. Now, I just noticed here that we're also, and it doesn't matter that we were in the dev new Python virtual environment there, but we're out of it. So let's go ahead and cd to labs devnet-src, and let's see what we've got here. So here are some of the directories we had. You can see the Python directory there. Well, they want us to do a make dir, and we're going to create a git intro directory. And then we're going to cd into git intro. So let's do an ls-la, long listing, show me all of the files, including the hidden files, remembering that the hidden files begin with a period, right? So we notice that there's nothing in here. Now, if there was something in here, we can add files to Git one at a time. But the first thing we want to do here in this empty directory is say git init. And this is the command right here that's going to initialize git intro to be a git repo. Now, when I say repo, it's R-E-P-O, and that's just short for repository, right? So the git repo or repository is going to be right here in this directory. Now, how do we know that this is a Git repository? Because we have the .git directory. So if I say git log now, you'll notice we get a different error message here. And this says, fatal, your current branch master does not have any commits yet. Now, I'm going to be using the word primary because this simply has an overtone to it that is not good. So when I say primary, I want you to think in terms of the Git parlance, it's master, but I'm just going to say primary. So our current primary branch, right, doesn't have any commits, meaning we haven't added any files in, we haven't done any commits of those files and added them to our Git repository. So what we're looking at right here is this is kind of the Git working directory, right? The repo, as I indicated, is that .git directory. So if I cd into .git, and we'll dig into this a little bit later, you can see we've got a branches directory, right? We've got a config file. What do you think might be in that config file if I cat it out? Just some information about the repository. And then we've got a description file. Let's see what's in that description file. Unnamed repository. Edit this file description to name the repository. So we could do something like that. And again, we'll dig into some of these other directories that are there, like hooks, info, objects, references, and branches. But you can see this is the Git repository, right? Pretty simple. Now, to take a step back, again, you might be wondering, okay, well, why would I do this, or why do I need to do this? And I kind of explained that, you know, you could branch off a copy or a version of your Python script and then do all kinds of work to it. And if you're happy with it, you could merge it back into the main branch, right? However, sort of the old school way to do this was you would use the copy command. So if I had a file, you know, called pythonscript.py, right? Before I edited it, and this is what I used to do back in the late 80s, early 90s, is you would simply create a copy of Python script and call it Python script, and you would maybe say .orig, and then maybe you throw the date in there, 02/16/2023, and maybe you put in your initials so that people know, you know, hey, who was it that made this original backup copy here in 2023 of this Python script? And then as you can see, so we end up with these two files. And then at this point, I could go into pythonscript.py, make all kinds of changes, and if I blew it up by accident, all I'd have to do is copy the orig file, which was the last well-known working version of that file, and copy it on top, right back on top of Python script. Excuse me. So that was kind of the old school way to do things. And let me go ahead and remove both of those files and get them out of the way here. So that's kind of the old school way of version control, is using the copy command, right? Or the move command, maybe to move it into a different directory, thinking that like, oh, this is a different branch of the code over here that we're working on. And so that's really what the source control, software source control, is going to allow us to do here with Git. Now, it's a little trickier with Git. However, we get far better forensic information as to, you know, who made the change, because remember, you saw us do those git config commands, when the change might have been made. And so we've done the git commit, and then if I say git status, actually, you can see we're on the primary branch. We have not made any commits yet, and you'll notice it says nothing to commit. And this is important because, again, this is considered sort of the Git working directory. It's not the staging area. In order for us to put things into the staging area, in order to make them eligible to be committed, right, so that we add them into the main branch or whatever branch it is we're working on, you can see we need to use that git add command. So what are, again, some of the status commands we want? We want git status, we want git show, and actually git show will come in later after we get the git log output, and then git log, right? So these are all commands that are going to help us out. So now we've initialized our Git repository. The .git directory is the Git repository. And so that's going to do it for this video. That's got us up and running here. We've initialized our Git repository. We know some commands that we can gather some information about the current status of Git with. And now in part 3 in the next video, we're going to dive in, add a file in, and we're going to see what happens when we make some changes to that file. All right, well, that is going to do it for this quick tutorial on part 2 of lab 3.3.11. And actually, quick go back, what you can also do, remember, the Git repository doesn't just have to be limited here. I could go into, and let's see, this should work in temp, and I can make a directory here and call it my test repo, right? And then cd into test repo, so you can actually start Git. I can initialize Git in any directory where I have permissions, right? So maybe you have a directory called production, a directory called development, a directory called staging, and in each of those directories, maybe you set up a Git repo. Now, Git is kind of designed to avoid having to do something like that. But again, I'm just trying to prove the point that you don't just do git init in a single directory. You could, but chances are you're going to do it in more than just one directory. All right, so that is going to wrap up Lab 3.3.11 Part 2. Hope you guys are enjoying the course, and as always, I hope to see you in the next video.